Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Willing Equine podcast. We are recording this in my car during my commutes to and from my work, so the audio may not be super clear, and also my daughter is with me in the car, so you may hear her little comments throughout the podcast. But otherwise, hopefully you can enjoy this podcast and we can discuss all sorts of interesting topics that have to do with making a positive impact on your relationship with your horse. Okay, I'm back. So as promised on my Instagram, I was going to do an update podcast episode about everything that's been going on through most of April and some of May now. I went on quote unquote break for April, which really wasn't a break. I was actually working quite a bit, just a different type of work. I found that I was spending so much time on social media and on making videos and all of that I wasn't able to spend as much time as I would like on working with my horses, and then also in developing future stuff for TWE. So that's what I spent a lot of April doing. Unfortunately, I had these grand plans of having the ability to roll out some new things when I returned on the 6th, but as life has it, sometimes that didn't happen. I actually ended up spending quite a bit of April recovering. I've been pretty much since last August just cranking it out every single day, go, never stop, writing, doing podcasts, doing blog posts, doing Instagram posts, YouTube videos, training videos, video lesson coaching, email consultations, video consultations, let's see what else, teaching lessons locally, working with my horses, working with client horses, and then also, there's other things too, like my students have a chat forum, and so lots and lots to keep up with, lots to track. I keep training logs for all the horses. That always takes a lot of time. And then plus I have 3 kids and a husband and a house, and unfortunately I have to pay taxes and stuff too. So just been super busy since last August. And then my son is actually getting ready to go through quite extensive procedures, which are it just has to do with his breathing and his structure of his face and stuff. So I'm not going to go into that too much because it doesn't have to do with the horses. But I've been dealing with specialist consultations. We've been through at least 4 or 5 now, and we're looking at surgeries, and he's only 4. So all of that, along with everything else I've been doing, has just been a lot. Plus, I've been really pushing to roll out some new things. I'm really looking forward to being able to provide clinics, local and traveling for clinics. So that's one thing I've been working on, just trying to format how that will look and what I'm available to do and be able to share that with you guys. Also wanting to share more formalized training content that I've been working on. And there's some other stuff too. I'm revamping a lot of my lesson programs and video consultations and stuff like that. So anyway, enough of that. I know you're not here to hear me ramble on about what's going on with me, but I wanted to give you guys an update on the horses and what's been going on with them. So I think it'd be best to go through it one horse at a time. We'll start off with River. River has been doing very well. I've been really focusing on her training lately. She went through a while where I was kind of put her on the back burner just because I was spending so much time with client horses, and also she was having some different, I don't know, her behavior was indicating that maybe she wasn't uncomfortable. I thought maybe a growth spurt, but turns out she has had fairly significant ulcers and stomach issues that she's likely had since she was weaned. A lot of ulcers in horses developed after weaning, and especially with River, it was a very traumatic weaning for her. It was a period in her life where she went through a lot of depression and diet changes and stress, so likely that would be definitely reason for ulcers to develop. And then also she had all those surgeries, and with the surgeries, you know, a lot of medication, a lot of transportation back and forth, just so much happens, and medications that follow that. Between that, the stressful weaning early on, and the surgeries, it's likely that she's been dealing with ulcers for quite a while now, and it's just never been something that I have noticed because she seemed fine. I haven't been super intense with her training. She's not under saddle. I've never tried to like cinch her up or anything. She did have a cinch one time, but she was fine with grooming. And so a lot of the typical symptoms you might think of weren't necessarily present. And also she has a diet that is an ideal diet for a horse with ulcers, for keeping away ulcers and helping them eat better. You know, she has forage 24/7. She has a low sugar diet. She gets alfalfa, grazes all the time. She's not stalled. So there was very few indicators as far as her lifestyle goes and her behavior that told me that she might have ulcers. But then I became aware of doing acupressure points and looking for specific acupressure points that might indicate that a horse is experiencing pain from ulcers. And when I did that with her, I was so surprised. She was extremely reactive. I would touch her in the certain points, and she would kick or bite at me. And so she was like, "Do not touch me there. That is really uncomfortable." So she's been having ulcer treatments and on long-term support for ulcers. And I've actually put all of my horses on ulcer support. I've been using just some different natural remedies, as well as making sure that all their diets are helpful for that, which they already were. But yeah, so she's actually doing much better now. I feel like her attitude has improved dramatically, and that her training is even doing much better. She was also one of the ones that went to the Peggy Hogan clinic with me this past weekend. And she did really well. I was very happy with her. She loaded up into the trailer beautifully. She was so well behaved the whole time we were there. She was superstar. She actually was one of the few horses that had the hands-on attention from Peggy Hogan herself. As far as she did a demo with her, and it was very interesting to watch. It was interesting to watch other people handle her, because she doesn't get trained by really anybody else besides me. I also had my friend Sarah work with her, because River is very much like her filly that's back home. So I thought it would be a good way for her to get practice where that she could take home information that would help her with her filly. So anyway, so everything's going good with River. Then we got Tiger. So Tiger has been doing really great. I don't have a whole lot to update on her besides that we have been working on start button cues with her, so she tells me when she's ready to start the next repetition of a behavior. And we specifically have been working on this with the mounting block, so I'm giving her full control over whether or not I get on. And I know that sounds like, well, why would a horse ever say get on? Or, well, okay, that's going to take forever. I don't have time to ask my horse if I can get on every single time. But for me, and this is something that's really important, that Tiger is willing for me to get in the saddle. I've worked very hard to counter condition having a rider on her back, but I've never, she's had the choice because I've never punished her for leaving. But I feel like the start button behaviors, where the horse tells you, okay, yes, you may now get on, provides a whole new level of control for the horse. And I'm experimenting with it. I'm still trying to discover what works, what doesn't work. And I was very grateful to Peggy Hogan in the clinic that I went to recently with her, that I've mentioned twice now, for helping me out with this, as far as answering questions and showing us demos and explaining it thoroughly. And that really cleared up some information for me, and it was incredibly valuable. So I feel like, I've had about 2 days where I've been able to experiment since that clinic, but I've had great success since then. So I'm very eager to see where we can go from this point forward. I've also been exploring start buttons with other things besides the mounting block, things like grooming and walking on, any behavior you can think of, really. And I've been doing that mostly with the other horses. With Tiger, I've been focusing on the mounting block with the start buttons. But yeah, so she's doing fantastic. I haven't had really any updates for you guys. There was a brief time where she was a little bit sore in her lower back, but that was because I kind of pushed her before she was quite ready to have a rider on her back again after the winter. She wasn't quite fit enough, and we went on a long trail ride for a promotional event, and she was willing. Like, we got on, and this was before I started the start buttons, but she did fantastic, and she was very well behaved and did everything I asked of her and more. But then when I think she was really sore after that, and it just took some time to recover. So, but yeah, other than that, she's been doing fantastic. I'm really happy with her progress. And I look forward to sharing more videos with you guys about the start button behaviors. So then let's do Pumpkin next. So Pumpkin has also been doing really well, and she had, if you all remember, fractured molars, and so she had two molars removed, and they had to be done about 6 weeks apart. So that was one whole medical procedure, and then a break, and then another medical procedure. And the first one took her a long time to recover from. I was very anxious about the second time, because I was just like, man, she's not going to be recovered in time for this clinic, and she's just going to be in so much pain for so long. It's just so dragged out. But she actually, within 4 days after having the second one removed, it was like she was a whole new woman. She was feeling so much better, ready to go right back into training and doing stuff with us, and she was able to go to the clinic as well and did fantastic. And I feel like she's actually lost some weight recently with spring. It's funny, usually seems to be the opposite, but I think she spends less time at the hay bale and more time grazing, so moving and walking while eating like they're supposed to, and so she loses some weight versus just being stationary and taking up food. So as far as training goes, she's been working a lot with my intern, which is another update. I have an intern. She's been helping. She's all the way here from Maryland and has been helping me with all the horses and learning from me, and she'll be here for about 6 weeks, so that's been fantastic. But her and Pumpkin get along really well. So Pumpkin's been doing a lot with my intern and students and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's all going really well. As far as, I think that's about it for her. She was very distracted at the clinic. She did very well. She wasn't panicked at all, but you could tell, like, she's just looking off into the horizon and taking it. You could see her inhaling like big nostril flares, as far as not snorting or anything, but just soaking it all in through her nostrils, and then deep exhales and just smelling everything. But she was really good and well behaved, and she actually did the clinic with another one of my friends who is from Washington, who I thought might get along really well with Pumpkin. And so we actually took 3 of my horses to the clinic. It was Tiger, River, and Pumpkin, but I worked with Tiger primarily, and then my friends worked with River and Pumpkin. So it was great. They all got to go. She loaded up beautifully, and I forgot the update in Tiger's part about the trailer loading. I find it interesting with her. I can spend so much time counter conditioning that trailer and just working on it, and the first time we go somewhere, she won't get back in afterwards. And she will get back in, but sometimes I have to resort to pressure and release when I don't want to, but we got to come back home. And she does well. It's not like we have a tantrum. It's not like she doesn't get in. It doesn't take very long, but it's not what I want. It's not exactly how I'd like it to be. I'd like her just to jump right in and be happy about it and find it to be a pleasant experience. So I'm experimenting with trying to make the trailer ride itself more enjoyable. I got her some special boots that absorb the shock. They're Easy Boot Clouds. And interestingly enough, after her ride to the clinic from my place, she fairly quickly got back in the trailer to come back home, which was a first, and I didn't have to use any negative reinforcement like I might have had, or I have had to do the last 2 times we've gone somewhere on the way home. Like the first getting in, she goes fine, getting out, she gets out fine, but then trying to get back home, it's always been a struggle. And I think it's just because she doesn't like how bumpy and uncomfortable the trailer ride is, since she's fairly flat-footed, and so that puts her frogs and soles right on the ground, which I imagine would be very jarring. So I will see, I'm going to continue to experiment with that, and I'm hoping that works, fingers crossed. Yeah, so that's a pumpkin / tiger update. So then let's see who we got next. Let's do Candy and Candy's a big one. So Candy had been doing some training. She's been really helping my intern get some practice and has been doing great, and not a whole lot of updates there as far as until she found the only nail on the entire property, hopefully, to step on, and it punctured the sole of her foot. And we are now on week 2.5, I believe, something like that. Something like that. As far as trying to get recovered from this injury, it's been, nail puncture wounds are no joke. The very big, expensive vet bill, lots and lots of soaking and wrapping and rebandaging and medications, and the vet having to come out and sedate her and do regional limb perfusions and cutting open the sole. And poor Candy, it has been such a trial of patience for her and painful, and she has been such a saint, and I'm so appreciative of all the work that her previous homes and I have done in getting her comfortable with having her feet handled and treated and medicated and tied and wrapped and handled by vets. And I mean, just good training is just priceless when it comes to situations like that. Even all of my other horses, I feel like they would have done pretty well, but Candy in particular, I think, excelled in being able to tolerate this type of treatment for this long without losing her calm as I would have. So I don't really blame her if she were to get upset. There was, after her abscess burst, I had to soak it again, and it was very painful. There was that one time, and oh my gosh, I accidentally sprayed her with a hose, and she hates hoses, and it was just, I felt so awful. Lots of cookies, lots of I'm so sorry, horse. I did not mean to do that. But she forgave me, and she's done well since. And we still have probably, I think, 5 more days of soaking and wrapping. Maybe more. They said that it's possible that abscesses will return as the rust from the nail gradually purges its way out of the body. That sounds lovely. I'm very excited. Okay, probably the shortest update is going to be Cash, because I mean, he's just my golden boy. There's rarely ever any updates for him as far as, nothing extreme has happened. No new, he's just a good boy. He just does a good job all the time. And he's very patient with my students, and he's just been living the good life. He just goes out and grazes all night around the property and all day for the most part. And then he comes in and does a little bit of training, and then he goes back out, and the cycle continues. I will tell you that he is obsessed with soaked hay pellets. I don't know why he loves them so much, but that horse, it's like a Hoover vacuum. And if he smells them, even if they're hidden, he can't see them anywhere, he will find them. He will be outside the barn all the way in the arena, and he knows that they're in the barn, and he will go and find them. And he will leave the training session to go find the soaked pellets. He's hilarious, and I don't even know how I know how he knows, but none of the other horses are that obsessive. He just, I don't know. He's just funny. I love him. But yeah, so that's pretty much the update on him, is that he loves his hay pellets and he's been doing good with his training. Okay, so last part. So I'm going to be really brief about the horses that are in training, just because they're not mine, and my training, the horses that are in training kind of come and go. But I guess for right now, it's part of what's going on. So it's part of the update. So with Cashmere, she is doing fantastic. She's just really I don't know, I feel like we've peeled back another onion layer with her. She has been really enjoyable to be around. Has at liberty privileges now, meaning that she's able to come out of her pasture or her stall and just roam the property, and she loves that. She is so happy to just be free to have that choice to come into the barn or not. I mean, she'll go out and graze for a while, and then she'll come in and check in with everybody and say, hey, what's up? Can we do some training? We'll do some training for a while, and then I'll tell, she's obsessive about training when she has a choice about it, which is always, but I feel like when she's able to come up to me and ask, I have a different horse that I'm working with, rather than when I walk into the pasture and ask her if she wants to train. It's truly her idea. Truly, she comes into the barn and says, hey, it's time to train. Let's do this thing. And she's just really engaged. She never wants to stop. And it's really fun to work with her and really exciting. So she's doing so well. I'm really happy. I feel like she's mellowed a lot, that she's experiencing less stress and able to cope with any stressors a lot better. She has been enjoying just people in general more. She's been doing really well for the trimmer. I'm just really excited about where we're going from this point forward. She has an appointment coming up soon to see a specialist osteopath. That may or may not get canceled just because we're having terrible weather here right now. And apparently the clinic is flooded at the moment, and they had to cancel lessons for the next couple of days. But I'm praying and hoping and fingers crossed that her appointment stands and we don't have to wait until September, which is the next time the specialist will be in the U.S. as far as I'm aware. So we are hoping to get into that appointment to be able to just double check and make sure everything's good to go before we continue pursuing her under saddle work, which, FYI, if you didn't see, I got on her for the first time since she's been with me, and it's been well over a year and a half since she's had a rider, and so that was really exciting, and she did very well with that. So I guess the last guy is, oh no, I forgot about my guy. Oh my goodness. Finn. My guy Finn, I don't know why. Sometimes I put him in the category of my training project horses. I'm not exactly sure why that is. Sometimes, I don't know, maybe because I've had 5 horses forever and it just throws me off to remember there's the 6th one. But Finn is for sure mine, for sure. So Finn is doing really well. Okay, you guys, I wish I could portray the level of cuteness, the level of sincerity and passion that horse has. He is little, but he is so smart and so intense and loves to work and loves to train, and he picks everything up in just a heartbeat. And oh my gosh, he is just like on fire, like with positive reinforcement training. He's so much fun to work with. I love working with him. We are treating him for ulcers as well. He was one of the ones that when I tested everybody that with acupressure points that he came back with very reactions reactions to the acupressure points for ulcers. So he's also been doing much better since I've been treating him for those. Less sensitive to being touched, less prone to biting at me, which doesn't really happen often with him. It's only if you accidentally touch him in one of the acupressure areas. So that makes sense. Those are the points that show sensitivity when they have ulcers. So if you touch him there, it's going to hurt. And horses communicate things with their mouth and their legs sometimes, so it's not a surprise. I'm not upset by that. We do want to teach him an alternative to biting, but I also can't expect him to not use his form of language when he's trying to communicate to me. I can try and I'm going to teach him to be a little bit more subtle about his communication by showing him that I will listen and that the other forms of communication will be reinforced. They'll be rewarded. So he doesn't need to communicate as loudly as possible, that I will listen, and he's not going to be pinned and forced to do whatever the human wants, which is something that unfortunately happens quite a bit with all horses, but even more so with ponies, with small horses. Because of their size, humans tend to they tend to be even more forceful and take advantage of them and just physically manipulate them in a bad way, manipulate them into doing whatever it is they want, and they skip the good training. So it's like the smaller the animal is, the more we feel like we can just skip the training and just expect them to deal with it, and then if they don't, we just manhandle them into it. So unfortunately this happens a lot with ponies, and it's something we're working through to show Finn that he can trust me, that I'm not going to force him to do things. Even his last trimmer farrier appointment, we did his front feet and he did beautifully, but he was not comfortable with having his back feet handled, even though he had been the previous time. And we just decided to leave his back feet alone since they weren't too bad. And the trimmer is going to come back in a couple weeks, and by then hopefully we will have made more progress on him being okay with his back feet being handled. But there was no point in pressuring him into it, and I'm not going to pin him and make him do it. I'm not going to, because easily, he weighs less than 250 pounds, so I could have very easily, two full-grown adult humans could have easily forced him into it, but that's not what I'm here to do. I want to teach him that he can trust me and that his size doesn't matter, that I will treat him like a big horse, like a really, really big horse that deserves respect, just like the big horses deserve respect and the little horses deserve respect. So if I want him to respect me, I've got to be able to show him that I can respect him as well. Okay, now truly, last but not least, is Mr. Biscuit. Biscuit has been doing really well. He has been teaching me, and as much as I've been teaching him, I feel like that's always a good place to be, especially as somebody who's a constant student. I'm always learning. I am extremely appreciative of any chance I get to learn something new, even if that comes in the form of, what now? With Biscuit, he has made tremendous progress. I have been able to go from him biting at my feet, biting at my body, biting at my hands. Anytime I walked into the pen, he would just bite everything and everybody that was around him all the time. So I've been able to go from that point to being able to be in the pen with him without him biting, without me biting, without him biting me, and he keeps his respectful space, not respectful, I don't want to use that word, he keeps a safe space. He's learned how to stay safely away from me and keep his mouth away from me, and he's learning how to do all kinds of things, and I've actually been able to take him on at-liberty walks throughout the property. We've been able to go on long, mile-long walks without any lead ropes or halters, and no biting. The interesting part has been that his biting is absolutely and I'm really confident about this after a couple of months of spending with him and really trying to discover the source of why he bites, because that's what we need. We need to know the source of why the horse is biting, not just that they're biting. Sure, they're biting. Okay, that helps us. We need them to stop biting. So that gives us a task to accomplish. But how do we accomplish that task? Well, the way you figure out how to accomplish a task as far as behavior modification goes is you need to find out what's triggering the behavior you don't want and why it's happening altogether, and then you can start to fix it. So for him, it's been a little bit of an exploratory process, trying to figure out what triggers it and when, and I've really come to the conclusion that it has a lot to do with fear. So Biscuit, and his fear reaction is very different from most horses. He doesn't bolt or get nervous or just a lot of the behaviors you're going to see in the typical horse that's getting nervous: high-headed, snorting, pacing, bolting, running circles around you. None of that. He doesn't do any of that. The first thing he does is turn and bite. So that's something we've got to change. And the way we're going to change it is we're going to start to work to eliminate his fear of people, fear of unknown environments, fear of losing control. And so we're going to work on that fear, and then we're also going to work on giving him an alternative. So what can he do instead of biting? What can he do instead of resorting to physical warfare if he feels uncomfortable with what's going on? So I've actually been exploring start buttons with him as well, just because I feel like they'll be incredibly valuable to him, and I've already seen a huge improvement in his behavior. He's doing really well. And also, I do want to point out that his biting is not just that. There has been moments where I strongly feel that they're a play behavior or like a stimulation behavior where he's like, I don't know what else to do. I'm just going to chew on this rubbery boot that you've got on. That's a great chew toy. And then also somewhat has to do with some food anxiety, which brings me to the other part that has been an interesting learning experience and an exploratory process, which is that he has a tendency to drop when he's working around food. And that's something that I firmly and passionately believe is a result of anxiety around food and a non-ideal reaction to being around food. The horse is too intense on the food. The food means too much. It's too valuable. It's creating too much of a chemical imbalance in the brain. This is my hypothesis, I should say, because it's just from personal experience. There's not a lot of or any scientific literature on this, but after many years of experience and talking to other trainers and getting everybody's opinions on it, this is what I feel right now, at least. But Biscuit has been a fascinating subject, a study on if this is really true, if this is really the case. And so we are looking at what triggers it, when, what kind of training, when, how, is it the length of the training, is it the type of food, is it because he had ulcers, which he's also another one that tested positive for ulcers, is it the person that's handling him? Is it the way we're feeding the food? Is it how much food we're giving? Is it just newness to clicker training in general? He's just really excited about this type of training. Doesn't have to do with the fact that he was an orphan foal, which can lead to food anxiety. There's a whole slew of questions there, and we're just slowly, like, okay, that might be it. We're going to see if we can make this better. Okay, that made a little bit of difference, or no, that didn't make any difference. What else can we do? So it's just been a really interesting experience with him, and I'm really excited to continue to see the progress with him. And I feel like I'm saying a lot in this episode. I'm sorry. Also, my voice is scratchy because I had I lost my voice completely over this past week because I had guests over and I was teaching, and then we had this clinic that I was talking a lot at, and then my kids have all had a cold, so I'm sure I have some sort of like laryngitis thing, and I think that's the right word. But yeah, we're just lucky that I have my voice today enough to do this podcast. But back to Biscuit. So he's doing fantastic. I'm really happy with his progress. He's just presented some interesting experiences for me where I'm able to really pull information from and add to my running theories and running hypotheses, whatever, and add to my informational database and figure out what's going on, what I think is happening. Is this going to work? Is that going to work? How can I use this with future horses? So yeah, I'm obsessed with any opportunity I get to do that. When, give me a hard horse to fix, and not fix, I feel like it's like implying that they're broken, but give me a horse that doesn't fit your average mold and I would love to problem solve. I would love to put together the puzzle pieces, and let's see what's going to work for this individual horse, because it's not always the same for every horse. I have for Cash, who will sometimes get a little overexcited about the food, he gets just like, okay, we're doing this with a lot of food. And if that starts to happen, I just know that if I drop some food into a food bucket, into a pan, he just has 1 or 2 repetitions with eating out of the pan, immediately no problems after that. So it's just like, for him, that's what works. And he just gets, because he's a starvation case, he can sometimes get, even if I'm working with like just Timothy pellets, he just gets, as one of my clients says, piggish about the food. But that doesn't mean he can't work with food. It just means that we have to be aware of the fact that this is something that is in his past, that he was at some point very much had food withheld from him and he was starved from food. And so food will always hold an very, very high value to him, and he will prioritize food and look for food and work for food above and beyond most average horses, just because in his history, in his brain, he's still thinking winter is coming, food is never happening again, and it's steadily gotten better and better. This is something that has progressively improved dramatically. It just takes time. It just takes time when you have a horse that it thinks in its brain that at some point this food is going to be gone. I better get as much as I can right now. It just takes time. Resource guarding can come from that. Aggression around food can come from that. Becoming overly excited about food can come from that. And overly excited is a bit of a construct, a bit of a wide term, meaning that the horse is just too much. Like there's too much of something. There's too much behavior of something. For Cash, he starts offering behavior like pacing around or trying to, do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Or he starts to drop, or he starts even to make a little low whinny, which I've started to link with dropping and stuff for a lot of geldings. If they start to make that little wicker at the human who has food, I know that they're starting to get a little overexcited about the food. So it's a good sign to me. So yeah, that's the update on everybody, and on me as well. Everybody's doing really well. And for you guys that remember what happened with my dog Roke, as far as he got injured, and then we also found that he had bone spurs in his back. He's doing really well. He's just basically on management. So if he starts to get a little bit sore, he stays home for the day, and also he's on anti-inflammatories and painkillers, and I've changed his diet a little bit as far as adding omega-3 fatty acids, and I've also added some other things like turmeric, I think that's how you pronounce that. But he's doing really well otherwise. So he comes out to the barn with me a lot. I've decided that I don't want to compromise his quality of life too much, so I am allowing him to continue to live his ranch dog life, although probably for the longevity aspect of it, to keep him from permanently injuring himself or tweaking anything or having to be compromised too early, let's put it nicely. Leash walks only, no jumping, no tight spins, turning, running, things like that. But just, what kind of life is that for a herding dog? And I'm working on things. I'm trying to discourage some behaviors that are trainable with positive reinforcement, to like jumping up or doing tight spins when he sees a four-wheeler coming. So there are things that I can do to help, and I'm working on those. But I am making a little bit of a compromise as far as letting him live his life like he's lived it his whole life, because it's not one of those things where it's 6 weeks of crate rest and he's good to go and he's back to normal. Or even with therapy, therapy wouldn't completely put him back to normal. Those are permanent fixtures in his back that will just continue to progress as time goes on, but we can definitely slow down the progress with management and keep him comfortable. So he's doing really well other than that. So I do have stuff coming, like I mentioned before. I have stuff in the pipes. I have things in the works. I'm really excited about those. I just didn't get to roll them out when I hoped, and it was just kind of disappointing to figure out that wasn't going to happen when I wanted it to. But it was really nice to get a break from as much social media and being able to catch up and feel like I can breathe again. So I did spend quite a bit of my month off recovering, spending my off days actually off, getting to visit my family and spend time with my kids. The last 2 weeks of my break, I did start getting back into the work aspect of it. I just didn't get to progress in certain areas, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. this is a healthy place to be, that I need to kind of reset, and I'm remotivated and really excited for the future. And it's helped me be able to prioritize what my future goals are and where I want to go next and what's important for right now for me and for my family and for TWE and for my horses. So that's a big aspect of it. The aspect of it. So I hope this update was entertaining. I don't know what else it would be. Maybe a little bit educational with the talk about the training horses. But that's all I've got to say. All right. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to find out more, head to my website, thewillingequine.com. On there I have a very extensive FAQ page that offers information and answers questions about training in general, as well as my training and services and more information about the Willing Equine. I'm also available on most major platforms, social media platforms that is, such as Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. On my website there's also a blog. I'm an extremely prolific writer. I love to write, so besides my podcast, that's another way to get access to information that I share. And also feel free to leave feedback. I love to hear from you guys. I want to hear what you think, what you like, what you don't like about the podcast, and any changes you might recommend. So if you are listening through Apple Podcasts, feel free to leave a review through there, or you can contact me through my website or one of those social media platforms. And I look forward to talking to you in future podcast episodes.